Welcome, everyone, to episode 98 of Lesser Known Operators. I'm your host, Nicholas Allen. Happy Veterans Day to everyone out there. And welcome to our guest, Matthew Butler, a retired lieutenant colonel from the 3rd Special Forces Group. He has found himself working at every tier of special operations, and now he is the author of From Green Beret to Shamanism, One Man's Journey to Heal, which coincidentally, it's like we planned it this way, is being released today, November 11th, 2025 on Veterans Day. So when you finish up this podcast, go out, click on the link in the description. You'll be able to get yourself your very own copy of Matthew Butler's book. Today's episode is brought to you by the Precision Wellness Group and Dr. Taylor Bosley. Precision Wellness Group helps you restore balance, unlock vitality, and fuel your momentum through bioidentical hormone therapy and evidence-based personalized telemedicine. Dr. Taylor Bosley is a board-certified physician, a U.S. Army veteran, and a former Green Beret. He knows where you've been, where you want to go, and how to get you there. And he's an actual doctor who can prescribe you actual medicine. That's a bonus. So if TRT, HRT, hormones, testosterone, peptides are something you've been thinking about for a while now, or just looking into, look no further than Precision Wellness Group and Dr. Taylor Bosley, Southern Pines, North Carolina, in-person, telemedicine, or walk-in. Today's episode is also brought to you by Alpha Elite Performance. Get your supplements for the gym at alphaeliteperformance.com. Use code LKO15 at checkout to save 15% on your order. I recommend the Pipe Hitter pre-workout and the creatine. I do appreciate you guys. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, pass these episodes along. Thank you for listening. Happy Veterans Day and enjoy the show. So I wait 10 seconds and then I do my very fancy intro, which is Matthew Butler. Welcome to Lesser Known Operators, man. Thanks for coming on.
The pleasure's all mine, man. Thanks for having me. It's a real honor. I appreciate what you're doing for the regiment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're equally important to the regiment. And when I saw that because you have had the longest standing invitation appointment with Lesser Known Operators. I think you sent me a message in January or February saying you wanted to come on the show towards the end of the year. And now here we are. Your book comes out on Tuesday, but I'm going to release this on book release today. So it'll come out today, the 11th. Why did you pick Veterans Day?
Great question, man. And so if I may, I'll just kind of, promote the book just for a quick second. So
Yeah.
The name of the book is From Green Beret to Shamanism, One Man's Journey to Heal. And I chose today to release it because my first Veterans Day out of service, which was Veterans Day 2017, that weekend I went down to, I ended up in Moab on a little road trip where I had planned to kill myself. And, I go back now every year and recreate that road trip in a way that is now a celebration of life, celebrating just the goodness of life and the things that I would have missed out on had I actually done that. And so in a way it's almost, and I love talking about shamanism as well, but one of the principles in shamanism is that we can't change the past, but what we can do is we can change the energy of the past. So I go back there every year with friends, family, and just turn it into a great event so that it doesn't hold that dark energy for me anymore. So there was a camp out the weekend prior to today, where I, camped with some friends and some family and did that. And then with the book release, just all to just kind of commemorate that miraculous event that sort of got me through that weekend where in 2017.
Long after that you made the decision not to do that, were you able to start talking about it?
It was years, man. It was really years. It was probably at least 4 or 5 years before I was able to talk about it, and not only just talk about it, but now actually kind of embrace the whole topic really of suicide and suicide prevention, and it's really kind of what I guess have devoted my life, this second chapter of my life too, in trying to prevent others from going down those dark roads. And so now I talk about it all the time. It's literally a majority of what I talk about.
Yeah, it's a people regard it as I've come up with as a cold. Like they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to catch it like a cold, right? And that's not
Yeah.
it. There, I have a lot of opinions on it and a lot of viewpoints. And one is, man, it's really hard to make content that is not icky about suicide. It's very difficult. Um, but somebody has to do it because nobody is accurately conveying what happens to the family and friends
Mm.
afterwards. There's no
Yeah.
thought for that. There's this split second decision, and then what somebody said? It's the only failure you don't have to live with, right?
Mm.
And so maybe
Well,
there's
in
very
a
little we
way.
can do with there's very little we can do with some of these split second decisions. Like if somebody's going to drink themselves to death, you got like 10 years to figure that shit out, you know? But
Well, yeah, and I had a Delta in our company that was his route, and it still kind of haunts me. Like his pictures over there on my wall. Um, but yeah, that's a really good point. Like I guess the person. I mean, other than the service members who we've lost that I knew, my wife's ex-husband took his life. And even though, it's your wife's ex, and feel kind of removed from that, but you're really not because um, her children, my stepchildren, and then, she lost a son. So all that trauma comes right back up. And so you just pass that trauma on to others in a way. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a hard topic.
it is. I my one of my best friends killed himself July 6th, 2023. Yeah, and as a result, I got his picture on a or his name on a piece of tape over here on a little memorial that my friend gave me. Uh, I got now sober. I don't drink anymore. That was like the catalyst for me going off the deep end. And now I'm sober. Now I don't drink anymore. And maybe something will come of that. We're talking about doing some things similar, not similar, but in memory of a friend of mine and myself in that direction. It's it's um it's tough to deal with, especially if you're having a hard time yourself. It's really hard to reconcile with the decisions that others make. If you're already going through it, then it's even more difficult.
It really is. And I love the analogy that you used about like it's difficult to talk about people kind of don't want to talk about it like a cold because they don't want to catch it. Um but the reality, and I'll give you another for instance, like I grew up in a really small town. I mean 500 people. And there was actually 6 of those towns like between maybe 250 up to maybe 2,000 that fed into a single high school where I went. And there was a group of boys, young men. I mean, this happened to me this happened when I was in middle school, but we had a group of young adults who had graduated maybe a couple years before that. And they were probably, so they would have been about, oh, I don't know, 8 years older than me, 8 to 10 years older, I guess. And one of them committed suicide, and then it did um, tick off a domino effect, if you will, of a couple. I don't remember the exact number, but another 2 or 3 that followed that. And so there is the real, like, and you see it kind of in clusters at times where like somebody in the community in the regiment, and then right after that, that a couple others do as well. So I think your metaphor is spot on, and I think that your assessment of it, like, it becomes more difficult for those of us left behind in a way to wrestle with the consequences because we are left wrestling with them.
Yeah, there's a depressing bell curve with that as well. It's actually not. It's this spike, and then you become inoculated to it. Because I've had some people reach out to me. One guy reached out to me, said he's had 33 people that he's worked with in the military commit suicide.
Jesus.
He At this point he goes, well, what are we gonna do? What can anybody do at that point? That's a staggering number.
Yeah, that
Um,
is.
I've had other guys say you really literally have to step over the bodies to try and save the next person. And I'm to the point where um, people don't read and they don't listen, but they will watch what you do. And the only way to get to the people that will make a split second decision is to be visible and living out the things that you write and what you say so that people can see what you're doing. And that's the hardest one, right? Um, because you really almost have to realize that you can't do anything about most of the cases. Because as one of my friends pointed out at a very large nonprofit, they have a season called suicide season twice a year. And that's a depressing term, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, very
And then
much.
to actually see the numbers. So very little that everybody can do, but we can talk about it. We can act and accordingly, act better, and hopefully make somebody reach out or make a better decision when the time comes. But on the other side of it, oof, I get it. I know what it's like to be miserable as well. And God, if you've got the right combination of pills, booze, uh, access and placement, and the right shitty feeling or memory comes along, that's pretty easy to check out of the hotel then.
Yeah, yeah, so that was exactly what was going on with me. I was abusing alcohol, I was abusing, opioids and sleep pills, kind of the same problem set really. I was going through another divorce, yet again. Was really having a hard time like finding my stride in civilian life. I wasn't. I mean, I kind of planned to sort of stay in that contractor military lane, but circumstances brought me back to Utah, so there wasn't a whole lot of military industry type work, contractor work to be found. Um, just financial problems, everything. I was just kind of getting to the point where it's just like, God, like I can't get a win on the boards here, and like and you just to me, a lot of it, I think, too, is also, and I don't think we talk enough about this in the community because it's not all PTSD and it's not all about combat. Like sometimes it really, I think one of the bigger things that contribute to those outcomes that we don't talk about is the loss of community. Like, in fact, one of the things that I've really heard, another great, like, I'm going to really borrow that statement about, it's the only thing you fell at that you don't have to live with. But another one is that you know, suicide is actually a from lack of connection, right? Like it's just, and I think that when we get out of the military and we're so used to being in these tight knit units, small tight knit units, we're surrounded by our brothers constantly in a good way, and then we get out, and for some of us, we just find ourselves so far outside of that sphere of influence, that friend group, that team, whatever, and you start to really, I guess, get, at least in my case, I was getting super isolated. Uh, you know, I mean, I went to work and back when I had work, and other than that, I didn't leave the house, and that was a big part of it for me.
Yeah, the I know when I left group, I completely isolated myself and moved to Wisconsin. There's very few SF guys here in Wisconsin. First group is 31 hours that way.
Yeah.
So it's not like I can go visit any of my buddies. I isolated myself out from here from the community. Not the best thing to do. But that's what happens to a lot of people when they get out. I'm going to go back to my hometown. Wait, you mean the one that you fled from to
Yeah.
join the military and that you hated it there? And then they go back and they get depressed because it still sucks because your hometown never changes.
No.
Going back to a situation, and people can. Once one person got me in comments about this because I make general statements because I see generally the same thing with these same outcomes. Is um, we attract, especially special forces, but the military in general, people that don't have their shit together or they're trying to overcome something. So they keep succeeding. They keep succeeding and going. And I've said special forces is very easy because all you have to do is work extremely hard. And as long as you work extremely hard, which is very easy, being lazy is hard. If you just keep working and winning, and that becomes addictive, and you keep doing that, you can keep going higher. And then one day that ends. And then now you're like, what do I do?
Hmm.
And then the winning stops. And that can easily, alcohol can easily take its place and become your new friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, there's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down there with that because, you know, the culture is so alcohol forward, right? Not even like more so, not just alcohol neutral, but like the standard was like, don't get caught without beer in your beer fridge in the team room if the sergeant major stops by. Like that was a major gig, and looking back on it, like, I mean, I get it. I'm not trying to be like super Pollyanna or, Victorian about it. Like, I get it, like adult beverages were adult and I'm sober now too. So I don't want to sound like I'm coming off like a prohibitionist. But what I am saying is it's like there's a part of me that thinks that if we really truly believed in our soft doctrine, the idea that humans over hardware, for example, well, wouldn't we be doing everything we could to enhance performance, like on every level? Like I always argued that performance enhancing drugs were the right option. Like I couldn't understand, like from a rational point of view, I couldn't understand why we wouldn't embrace that. But that's just a tangent. But like why are we not studying? Like I'll give you another for instance. There's a rumor that the that in some of the tier 1 units that guys are microdosing psilocybin, and since we're going to get into plant medicine, that guys are microdosing plant medicine in those environments because they're not tested for. And on top of that, they actually bring a great amount, like, our ancestors used to take mushrooms when they went and hunted because it caused more creativity, problem solving, better vision, focus, things like that. So it's like you can easily see how those same qualities or outcomes are needed within the tier 1 units. So yeah, why wouldn't they be doing it? And honestly, why wouldn't we be embracing it if it's in? And so why would we, on the converse, then why do we embrace essentially, like functional alcoholism? Like I don't get it.
Because alcohol can be taxed and all of those other things cannot be. That's why it's remained uh, legal. Because it's the only medicine over the counter medicine that actually works, and everybody at every level can self medicate with that one. So it's universal. But the incoming generation, they don't drink.
Yeah,
They don't hardly drink. So we've got the pendulum swings really far this way, and it's going to swing really far the other way. Um,
absolutely.
we we won't be around for it to swing all the way back because it's going to take a while. They'll be like, "Oh, this is boring," and then it's going to come back. But that's okay. As far as professional athletes, what I tell people is everybody is on something. And if they're not, they're going to lose. So there's there's tests to keep people in line, but those tests only test for certain things. Every professional athlete, if they want to win, is on something, and if they're not going to be on the podium. So that's what I say to that. If guys can take the stuff, I think the guys should be able to take whatever the fuck they want. I think you should be able to take whatever you want, and as long as it doesn't interfere with your job, you should be able to do whatever you want. But the reason the military, and I did a little piece about this, the reason the military you can't have performance enhancing drugs is because they'll turn it into something so evil that could become manipulated by either a contract or an officer in a
Yeah.
certain position that doesn't agree with it, and then they'll turn it into a weapon against the soldiers. So you can't have it. It would become like this malicious thing intended to be good and to help people, and it would be a disaster, and it would end people's careers early and kill people, probably kill more people, because that's the only thing the US government's good at, killing
Yeah.
people, whether it's
That's
our
a true
soldiers or
statement.
theirs.
Yeah.
So
On the quick note on the like you did mention like how like it's what we do and others are watching that that makes a difference, and I agree with that. The one thing I would add to that is you know every once in a while on social media you see these sort of you know passive aggressive posts that say something along the lines of like I know that my friends are reading this, but I know which three are gonna copy it and paste it and repost it. Yeah, I know, right? And again, like I get it. They're trying to do something, and I appreciate that there's something that's taking place. But my approach to it is like you can't like let's say it was you and I, right? Like I might go out on a limb and say, "Hey Nick, if you ever need anything, my phone's always on 24/7 for you, bro. Call anytime, I'll be there, I promise," right? And that's good too. But I think that there's another level that we can get to if we want to look at it as crawl, walk, run, like that passive aggressive things kind of crawl. Offering to pick up the phone for my brother any time of the day is kind of walk. But to me, the run part is instead of waiting for somebody in crisis to reach out to me and I answer the phone, because anybody who's been in crisis, myself included, the last damn thing I was about to do was pick up the phone and admit it to anybody. And so in my mind, we have to go back to that ranger buddy mentality where I'm I'm looking after myself, but I'm also looking after my buddy, and my ranger buddy's looking after himself and looking after me. In other words, I think that the run level of this is you know who your circle is, and like learn to watch the patterns. Like, okay, he's on social media, he's engaging, he's texting me, he's whatever. And then all of a sudden, 3 months down the road, the pattern changes, right? Again, he might be withdrawing, isolating, whatever, not answering his phone, drinking too much, things like that. So when you see that change in the pattern, it's like doing your intel, right? Like regular being an 18 Foxtrot, you see like, oh, wait a minute, like something changed in Nick's behavior, for example. He's not responding to my text messages. Like that, like to me, we have to be proactive in going after our ranger buddies and keeping them in the formation, so to speak, versus like, hey, I'm here if you need me. Like, which I am, and I'm sure you are. I'm sure all of us are. But I still think that that's the walk level. And if we want to get to run, we got to like know like, okay, like I haven't heard from so and so in a while. Let me get them on the phone because I'm concerned.
problem? No, that's good. The problem is that everybody's got their own lives, and you can't expect anything from anybody because they might just miss because everybody's going through something that they're not telling anybody about. Nobody is 100% okay. If
Yeah.
they say that, they're fucking lying, guaranteed. And like, I feel like the biggest piece of shit like 50 times a day. I also feel like I can take over the world 50 times a day. So it's a big yo-yo game of back and forth all day long. But people might miss stuff. People could tell in my content when I'm having a bad day. They'll message me and be like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, somebody fucking pissed me off. They're complaining about one of my guests and shit." And I'm like, if I have a woman on my show, people have to go out of their way to tell me how terrible she is. I'm like, I think she's not, but you can go fuck yourself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, and people are, people will go out of their way to be mean, but your friends won't. So the important thing, and I tell people, I'm very open with people. I go, if you need help while I'm asleep, I am not going to wake up. There is nothing that's going to wake me up because I take sleeping pills. I cannot be the first person on your list. Honestly, I'm not going to wake up. So if you get me at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll be there for you the rest of the day until I go back to sleep. But after I take my sleeping pill, I'm not going to be there for you. So you got to have somebody else. And I'm just honest with people. But
That's a great thing though.
yeah, I'm pleased. But also, I've said if I'm going to have lesser known operators and I'm going to make it stand out from your normal page, right? Well, I better have an answer for somebody when they get a hold of me, as long as the message that you send me doesn't look like spam, because I get a lot of those. But if you send me a message, I have an obligation, I think, because I use this as a stepping stone and regiment and first group and all these other things as a stepping stone. I have an obligation to give somebody the correct direction or information or reference or connect them with the right person to help them on their way. And I try and do that. Not, I use that as the tagline, but in the messages, that's what I really try to do. And I really try to help people. And so that's just the doing. And if people see you doing that when they reach out to you, then they'll say, oh, this person will help you, or he has people that he can send you to, and things like that. So it's more of just doing. You just have to do. The only way to get better at interviewing people and speaking in public is to do it. People hit me up for advice in the gym all the time. How can I get better at rucking or running or lifting? I said this, the only thing that has ever worked for me is if you want to lift more, you're going to have to lift more weight. If you want to run faster, you're going to have to run faster. If you want to get better at talking in front of people, God, you're going to have to get up and talk in front of people. The worst one there is, right?
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you're saying because the last time that you and I sort of circled the idea of recording a podcast, we were seeing if we couldn't somehow fit it in to your road trip, like, you attending the Veterans Day weekend. And, you told me during that phone call, because we were talking about, your efforts and with your podcast about like, yeah, like, I'm just getting out there and grinding and hustling and learning on the way. And, people are going to be able to see the progression in what I'm doing. And that's okay, because that's kind of the mark of like somebody who's perfecting their craft and getting after it. Because I had been really reluctant to go out onto social media because I didn't feel like I had all the answers. And then right after you said that a couple months ago, I was like, yeah, okay, that's sage advice from a brother in the regiment. And it's okay if my social media is crap at the beginning or whatever. I'll do the Green Beret thing, which is just, keep grinding, keep hustling, keep learning, keep perfecting. And so you inspired me a great deal to kind of embrace my social media efforts.
Yeah. When have you ever given a fuck what people think about you in a negative connotation, right?
Right.
Never. But then we pick up our phone and we go, oh, people are going to judge me. Like,
Yeah.
they've judged you your whole life. Like, who gives a fuck now?
Yep.
Um, you just got to do your thing, When I tell this to regular Army guys, your chain of command, fuck them. If they wanted to succeed, they wouldn't be where they're at, right? They wouldn't be telling you lies about selection and shit. You
Yeah.
gotta, if you want something, nobody cares about your career but you, and you just gotta take care of it that way. The little bit that I know about social media, I try and tell everybody everything I've done, because people have been so helpful to me when I started. There are people that might not want the best for you, but hopefully you can recognize that as much as you can as you go. But for the most part, that's why I'm so helpful, is because when I started, people were like, oh, you need to do this. You should do this. Collaborate with me on this. Oh, fuck, absolutely. And now I try and help everybody that I can and say, because it's not a secret. Like, it's this new technology era that we're in. You got to help people out because I have slightly more knowledge than you. And if I can help you out just a little bit, that helps me and then helps you and just strengthens the relationship. And then if you need something or you have somebody that wants to talk to me, then there's a conduit to get to that. It's the big 18 Fox fucking cigarette in the mouth, fucking pointing at the wall thing, trying to
Yeah.
figure out who's underground is tied to who's underground. So, but at least we should have it out in the open of who's working with who and stuff.
Yeah. And if I can, I'll address my social media right now. Like, in fact, I'm on 4 platforms. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook as Awake Green Beret. You can also go to awakegreenberet.org to find the links to purchase my book. But you know, we've had a little run in the community lately this year with some stolen valor issues, right? And a lot of the reasons I think, well, I mean, there's 2 real reasons I think that the community came down hard on those individuals is because one, it's just not, it's not what we do. This is a community, hopefully, that's governed by integrity and self-integrity. But secondly, it was seen as, and probably rightfully so, as like the monetization that came from that, those people directly benefited from it. And so I am very clear because I want people to know and understand that, yeah, 100%. I'm out here doing podcasts and giving interviews and doing my social media thing because I 100% want to sell books. But, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I will pay for the audit come 31 January that shows that all the funds, or excuse me, 31 December, but everything that comes from the sale of these books go right back into our nonprofit, which give away free ceremonies to soldiers and veterans who cannot pay for it. So yeah, I'm hoping, that people will, and so, yeah, like instead of making a donation, just buy the book and read it and keep the receipt. It's tax deductible. The nonprofit is the publisher. Our nonprofit's called Natural Worship, which is both a church and a nonprofit. And it was their the church's tax information that I used in, setting this up, and the church's bank account and everything like that. I won't touch a dime of it.
Um, as far as people talking about things they did or didn't do, I, you know, there's so much good going on that needs to be highlighted. I don't give a shit about them. Like, I hope they get help, and I hope whatever commander needs to make a decision ends up making a decision. But I'll never sit at those tables. I try to counsel people. Yes, affect what you can, but at a certain point, you have to move in a positive direction and positively impact the people around you, because worrying, what is it? Worrying is paying a debt you don't owe. And there's plenty of people on that train that'll handle that. But there's very little you can do, even if you're the first Special Forces Regiment commander, one SFC commander, right? Because there's very little you can do. So as far as that, and that, but to that aspect, right, of people, doing that sort of thing, the other side of it, it's such a hindrance because people are less apt to stick their head up and be proud of what they actually did, because they're seeing somebody get hammered for telling fish stories, right? And they're so careful now. Everyone's so hesitant. The word quiet professionals has hurt us more than it helped us over the last 25 years,
Yeah.
because we got beat to market by literally every other special operations entity,
Mm-hmm.
even the unit, right? Even the unit be like, they're so shrouded in secrecy that that people are like, oh, that's more exciting. Oh, Green Berets, well, the quiet professionals. Nobody wants to fucking say anything. So now everybody's beating us on social media and beating us in the press and the media, and the recruiting is
Exactly.
showing that.
Yeah,
So
it comes right down to recruiting. You're right.
yeah, but how long did it take you to set up? Did you set up the church? Is this whole entity of your makings from 2017 until now, November 11th, 2025?
Well, so 2017 was when I wanted to unalive myself. I didn't actually do much to fix that problem for a couple years. I mean, I was trying to get into an ayahuasca retreat, but I got arrested in 2018 for domestic disturbance with destruction of property, and then pandemic happened. So I actually didn't connect with ayahuasca until 2021, and so then that became so. That's when I started set out to do that, and I got some really horrible advice from a lawyer. Um, Go figure, right? So we established a nonprofit, which back in the day was called Juniper Mountain, and then through the again like that's why this mentorship, like whether it's social media or forming a church or doing whatever, mentorship is the key, man, because that's what I feel is like what helps save us all, the like tapping into the lessons learned. But in any case, another mentor of mine told me, like, oh no, you can't do it as a nonprofit. You have to be a church, a federally and state recognized religious body. And so then I went back to the same lawyer, and he's like, well, we'll just do a DBA, a doing business as. So I had a nonprofit with a DBA, and we kind of limped along with that for a little while, and it just became clear that if anything really went wrong, like my ability to be bulletproof in front of a judge, that wasn't going to cut it. So I disbanded that. And then we formed another one that was called the Pagan Entheogen Church, which the name was problematic because people thought pagan meant, all sorts of things, and people didn't know what entheogens were, which is just Latin for sacred plants. And so that one had some problems, and ultimately it failed as well. So what I took all those lessons learned, folded those others, like completely did the paperwork to dissolve them completely, and then formed another, just started fresh, started a church, and went through the paperwork process in late 2023 and got federal recognition in January of 24. So just over a year and a half ago. And so it's a church with a 501c um, nonprofit attached with it called Natural Worship. And it took me several months, and you go back and forth between the IRS and, which is, I mean, it's a bit laughable. It's laughable in a lot of ways that I even have to form a church to be in touch with nature. And it's laughable that it's the IRS that approves that. Like you said, like we're going to be very careful who we give tax exempt status to because they want their cut. But yeah, going back and forth with them over the months, and finally was recognized in January of 24.
Quick sidebar here. 27 years in the military as an officer. You didn't know pagan entheogens was going to fail right from the first time you wrote it down?
Well, quick clarification. I was only an officer for 24 of those 27 years. I did have 3 years enlisted time.
That's even worse because you have more experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. Valid.
That's it. That you didn't make it any better there because those are the early years. So you actually
Yeah,
were
yeah. No, I
enlisted
should have
and an
known that that
officer.
wasn't going to work. I really, at that time I was really into sort of my pagan, my pagan phase. I've sort of like gone back further into what preceded paganism, which was animism. So it failed on a lot of reasons, but yeah, you're right. I should have seen the writing on the wall with that one.
When you said that, the movie Dirt, when Mick Mars is like, "Oh, you know why that band failed? Terrible band name." And he's like,
Yeah,
"I've been saving this one, Motley Crue. I've been saving this, right? Great band name." Yeah, I tell people they'll start reading me their email address and they'll be like, "Well, it's 1Q dash underscore overscore." And I go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Here,
can you text
you
it
need to
to
go
me?
back. Can you text it to me? Because this is terrible. You know this is terrible, right?" No,
Yeah.
not to give you a hard time, but
No, no,
um,
it's valid.
So, and then, okay, so recognized as a tax exempt religion in the United States, right? And that's key because then you don't have to leave the United States for
That's
these.
right. Right.
Okay.
So, there's really kind of in my mind the way I've seen the landscape is there's really kind of three ways to practice this this role to administer these plants. Um, Really, I prefer calling them sacraments. Some people will say plant medicine. I say it still often enough, even though I shouldn't. The reason plant medicine is problematic as a term is because then the medical community kind of comes after you for practicing medicine without a license, literally. So that's but the common people commonly refer to it as plant medicine, but sacraments, if you will. But yeah, so like kind of the three ways that people go about it. There's either like the super sort of clandestine way, right? Stealthy, where you administer to friends and family and it kind of grows and it's word of mouth and people are very tight-lipped about it. There might be like a Telegram or a WhatsApp signal type of group chat, and if you get properly vetted, you can be admitted in, and then people will you'll get the details of the next ceremony that way, right? Um, to me, that's problematic too. Like, in fact, I think that some of the most unsafe practices around this space is the fact that we've created it. We've created a black market. Like demand never goes away, and so with the government creating these laws that prohibit our ability to engage with them, well, then they've just created the black market around it, which means there'll be a whole host of bad actors in that space. So that's kind of like one way that people go around it. The other way is kind of where I'm at, where like you said, we we have a code of ethics or a beliefs statement. We put all of that into paperwork. We declare what our belief system is, and then we share that with the federal government, and that allows us to be what I call protected. It's more of like a responsive or reactionary space, meaning if anything, if law enforcement ever decides to get frisky with me, then ideally I've done enough work with my lawyers and I've done enough work with what the space best practices. There's like for instance there's an organization out there called the Shakruna Network, because the chacruna leaf is the active ingredient in ayahuasca that contains the DMT. So they named their organization after the chacruna leaf. And they put out a lot of best practices that I stay abreast of and study. And so hopefully if everything, if anything does go awry, I can document all the best practices and the how I followed all the right steps to set up a church. That's like level 2. What level 3 is, and there's only been like a small handful of these churches that have gotten to this level um, in the United States, and that is where they go out and spend about $100,000 and 3 years of their time getting what's known as the DEA exemption, meaning that it basically it's like the FDA coming to inspect a dairy, basically, where the DEA can pop in and inventory your stuff and look at your checklists and your procedures and everything like that, and so that would be the ideal. But right now we're just we felt like the the first space, the tight-lipped, vetting, all that didn't really work for me in terms of like a long-term plan, because I'm not trying to serve the greater Salt Lake community. I'm trying to serve veterans. I'm trying to serve operators. And so I need to be a little vocal, like in terms of social media and, well, just putting it out there and letting people know that this is a resource. And so I wasn't going to be, like in the shadows and just running a signal chat or whatever. I wanted to be able to reach our brothers, reach the regiment, reach people who maybe not live around here, and have a legitimate way for them to source to contact me. And so it made more sense that we were in at least in that second group, category, with an eye towards working towards the third category eventually.
Yeah, I had a guy message me and he's like, I want to introduce you to so and so. Do you have Signal? And I go, bro, I don't. No, no. I know what you're trying to do. I don't want to be, first of all, I don't need another messenger. And
Yeah,
second, I
right.
don't want to end up on a Netflix documentary where, it's some Signal chat led to the FBI investigation, and then the ATF was also working and they weren't talking to each other. And then there was a raid, and then David Koresh came back to life and fucking burned the whole place down. And it was terrible. So I was like, no, if people can't message me on Instagram, I'm not interested. Like, no, thank you. I appreciate it. But
Well, and that's actually a really accurate point, because I was talking to a friend of mine, another colleague who I've known from the, like the beginning of this space, and he said, "Hey, are you still in that Signal chat? Such
great.
and
Oh, here
such."
we go.
Oh, exactly. It's exactly what happened. He's like, I'm like, no, I left that group years ago. And he's like, okay, good, good, good. He said, yeah, it's been infiltrated by, law enforcement, and they're going after people. And so, yeah, no, you made the right call there.
Yeah. And yeah, and that's the work. I watch a lot of documentaries, and there's only two things that can happen: is one, you're not paying your taxes, or two, is the cult, and the government's going to come after you for one of those two things because you're doing something wrong.
Yep.
So good,
100%.
at least be above board enough to where the government will leave you alone.
Well,
Hopefully.
and that's another great point. Like, I don't actually, I look at it like, I don't want them to necessarily leave me alone. I kind of want to embed with them, like, in a way, like, I take this from some of our Afghan experiences, in terms of, like, like, of course, I always felt like SF sort of like brandished both the carrot and the whip, right? Like, we were willing to incentivize cooperation with partner forces and village elders, and, you know, but if not, and if they weren't willing to cooperate, then, we had the whip, and we could, bring down the whip on them. And so, I don't really have any whip in the game, but what I do is I still see that sort of sit on the carpet and drink tea mentality when we were trying to offer the carrot to the village elders, so to speak. So I am in the process of arranging appointments with local law enforcement, because I want to sit down with them and say, look, I honor and respect the job that you have to do to keep these substances out of hands that where they shouldn't be, right? Where it's illegal, where it could be dangerous, where, unsupervised, children, all the things. I get it. I respect that. But you also should also respect my um rights to be able to serve these under religious exemption and as sacraments. What does our common ground look like? You know, Tell me, like, let's talk about it. It may not quite be like, a DEA exemption, but I'm okay with the law enforcement, um, having access to, my safes and things like that, where I store things. And I'm okay with them coming by. I'm okay with them, asking all the questions about ceremony. So I'm kind of actively working on getting in front of, like, one of my friends uh, served in the Salt Lake County Police Department, or excuse me, Salt Lake City Police Department, and I'm kind of going through him to set up some of these appointments and talk to more law enforcement about it. Because frankly, that's another, like, little known secret in this space, is that there's a ton of law enforcement and firemen who have encountered some really horrific things, like, on the same sort of levels that a lot of a lot of us encountered. And so they need these treatments as well. And frequently I'll have them come to my ceremonies as well.
It's not a secret. It was just overshadowed for 25 years. to the point of, the news dominated by military happenings for 25
Yeah, yeah,
years in the
yeah,
Middle East, and police, firemen and police officers. It's regional, so it doesn't really leave the town very often. Sometimes you get to state troopers or county, but it's really, you live where you work. So that story doesn't really cross borders. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's just kept within its own geographical borders. Where the military is this national thing, national news all the time, and it really overshadows everything. And
yeah,
then there's a pervasive thought of like, oh fuck, I don't have it as bad as these soldiers. No, no, it's the other way around. These soldiers don't have it as bad as you. You need to just speak up, and because the average paramedic sees way more shit than top 10% of medics. You know, it's your 10th percentile of medics of the shit they've seen because they're going to combat every night. Not saying one is worse than the other or any, because everything that happens to people is the worst thing to ever happen to you is the worst thing to ever happen to you. But yeah, we do need to get that out there more is that your first responders see way more action. It's the Super Bowl every day. Every day has the chance to go sideways, and sometimes, often does. So, and I like what you're doing there with the God. It's almost a conventional UW approach, right? By, with, and through your local, and especially you're going to have the most success with the younger generation because if they know what you're doing, the police officers that are just starting now, because that guy's going to be chief in 20 years,
yeah,
you know, and then he's grown up through the ranks knowing what you guys are doing and that you're helping people and has a good perception. I have that with the guys that are coming into the service now. I'm done. I'm in the year group of my peers are starting to look at retirement, right? I've been out for quite a while, but the guys coming in now, they know me and I have to put on a proper, I have to do what I say and say what I do. And then those guys will grow up in their career and then I'll have a position speaking with them later if they get into positions where I can speak with them and hopefully influence the next guys when I turn this over to somebody else, So it's all this long game. It's not this short, game of 5 card stud. We're playing go fish, and it's never going to end.
yeah.
Oh, I got to think about that as well. Have you? Did you get any type of like gimmies for doing this for helping for veterans or first responder reasons, or was it all just black and white by the book with the IRS and the government?
No, it was all black and white. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's it's an interesting process to go through for sure. I mean, it's such kind of a funny turn of events, to be honest with you, because, like you mentioned cults a little bit earlier. I don't go so far as to say that the Mormon church is a cult, but it's a high demand religion. And there's a lot of documentaries out there about it. But, I left the Mormon faith. Boy, when did I leave it? Probably back in like 2011, I think it was. Um, and kind of a famous story. Joseph Smith creates his church that has lasted for a couple hundred years now, and so I had a real resistance towards religion. So, and a lot of people like will come to the ceremony. Like some of them are really worried about losing their faith, and I can tell you, like with confidence that I've never had anybody who's come to religion who lost their faith from the experience. In fact, I'll tell you that the last ceremony I was in, which was 2 weeks ago, the one of the gentlemen said that it actually like solidified his Christian faith, the experience. And so I think that that's the more likely like outcome is that people feel more confirmed and convicted in their faith. But for me, I was super like and that's the other thing we get a lot of is people like don't want to sit in ceremony because it's like, well, that's a religion. Like you brought religion into it. I'm like, no, not exactly. Like you said, like I'm using my First Amendment right to declare these sacred plants as our sacrament, and we're going to hold a spiritual sacred ceremony and commune with these plants. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting twist in my life, I guess, in a way.
Sort of a all-inclusive, non-denominational sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like, in fact, our, like I said, we had to produce a statement of beliefs, and it's essentially, it's really simple. It says that we believe that our wellness, happiness, and abundance lie in our ability to commune in nature in all of its forms. And then we go on to say it might be a hike, it might be meditation outside, it might be a cold plunge, and it also might involve plants and fungi. So very, very, very vague intentionally, because we really like, and that's a sincere belief. Like I sincerely believe that my greatest joy and happiness and wellness is directly proportionate to my ability to be in nature.
Close you off to anything also. It
Right.
we get this broad stroke of outside as well. Um, okay. So did you have to define what a ceremony is in this documentation or paperwork, or is that
No.
they left? Okay.
Yeah. I think that again, there's some really interesting what's the word, I guess sets of circumstances at play here, given the fact that I'm in Utah. Like it's almost like divine now that I'm in Utah. I came back to Utah with resistance, and now I'm pretty grateful that I'm here. And so, for example, I mean, like again, the Mormon Church is the predominant religion here in Utah, and they have sacred ordinances that they don't want to talk to anybody about. They say it's not secret, it's sacred. Okay, fine. Like, I'm not going to quibble over your words. But if you're going to be afforded privacy around your sacred ceremonies, then terrific. I will accept that same privacy around mine.
So you just happened to be in the best place to start this up.
Yeah, kind of. Like what's interesting is I used to also be in advocacy space. Like I was talking to state legislature frequently. I was going up to Capitol Hill frequently and testifying. And ultimately, I walked away from that because really the only way that you convince a politician to do anything is, by paying him through a political action committee and donating to his fund for reelection. So I walked away from it because we just didn't have those types of deep pockets. But it became very apparent, like people in that space with me would say, oh, like you're never going to get it passed in Utah because of the Mormon Church. And I would actually counter with, actually, I think we'll get it passed in Utah because of the Mormon Church. Because if we rely on, the First Amendment and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, then we have a precedence there with the Mormon Church that kind of allows us to really flex our First Amendment rights in a way. Because if anybody in the state wants to scale those back, like specifically around these plants, then they're ultimately doing harm to the Mormon Church as well. They can't really be separated. I mean, they may want to try to separate it, but intellectually and probably in front of the state Supreme Court, that'd be a really, really tough sell.
Yeah. So you can use precedent, right? So if somebody tries to come at you for one thing, and you could get the church involved, and they would send down a team of lawyers that says, no, you're not going to do that, because that would affect us. So Yeah, some sort of happenstance piggybacking. Good for you. Awesome.
Yeah, it was a happy little miracle, really, to be honest with you. So
Well, and it's not a bad location. I just drove through there. It's beautiful as well. So
yeah, it really is. I mean, there's parts of Utah that I think, like this sort of the sagebrush plains that I don't really particularly care for. But I mean, I right out my window right here, I'm staring at some, I don't know, they're probably in the neighborhood of 10,000, 9,000 feet peaks, granite peaks, which are pretty magnificent. And then, like you saw, and I know you made it to Moab, right? I know you at least came up through Four Corners.
now I went to Monument Valley.
Okay,
Four
yeah,
Corners was Google said it was going to be closed, so I went to Monument Valley, and then I went to where Forrest Gump ended his run. Did some squats there, and
uh-huh.
then came back around through the top into Salt Lake. But I was hauling ass when I got to Salt Lake. I had to be somewhere, so
Yeah,
I and it was kind of raining, so I didn't really get to see much. I come through there in the daytime though; it's very beautiful. So
yeah, those red cliffs down there. And so that's why we go back to, Moab is one of my favorite places on earth. It really is.
I'd never seen anything like that. So I left the Grand Canyon at I don't know lunchtime, 1 o'clock, and then went northeast. I had never left going northeast before, and sunset we were southwestern Colorado, and just unbelievable. I really had never seen anything like that before. The colors, and then just as soon as the sun, it just shut off, and I was like, wow, that was really fast. It was just beautiful, and then off, and then I got for the first time ever driving. Maybe the second time. First time was in Wyoming with some mule deer, but there was a herd of wild horses crossing the road in the middle of the night or in the night. And I went, I am not going to smoke a horse at 75 miles an hour. Not, I'm going to get a room. We're going to bed. That is not something I'm willing to hit a deer, a bear, a moose, all kinds of stuff. But I'm not going to hit a horse.
Yeah.
That's
Good
it.
call.
We're gonna call it a day. I can't imagine that. Oh my God, they're wild horses. Or were these horses were somebody that they were somebody's pet that they got out. I was like, nope, we're done. We're going. We're gonna bed down for the night.
Smart.
All right, so go through all of what the government has to say. How did you start? Because you had to get the idea from somewhere to go. I need to do this because I went on somebody else's show a little over a year ago, and I went, well, I want to do that. And then I created my own little thing. What was the spark to start you on all of the paperwork journey with the US government, which had to be so much fun?
Yeah. The spark was really, it was really the very first ceremony I ever went to. Um, which, I mean, I went there sort of in desperation. Like there's no other way to describe it. I didn't spend a lot of time. In fact, I was only in jail like less than 12 hours, but it was enough that it really woke me up. Like, you know, we're taught how to do, analysis and intel and things like that. And what I could see is that my run-ins with the law were getting closer and closer together, and they were getting more and more intense. And it's like, okay, I can see the math. And then finally I got arrested. It was my father that had me arrested, actually. And I always say, like, just how much respect I have for that man, because he saw me going down this really horrible path, and I felt like he must, well, and we've talked about it since, but essentially at this like really really desperate crossroads, it's like either I do nothing and watch my son self-destruct, or I intervene and maybe never have a relationship with him again. And he rolled the dice on intervene and had me arrested that day. And so that was really the catalyst for me wanting to find a solution, and going, like, doing my research, which led me to ayahuasca, which led me to seeking an ayahuasca ceremony. And that was it. Like, and this is what I would call like a not so best practice. This is bad practice. But when you go, you when you do ayahuasca, you basically put an intention into the medicine. Like you literally put your non-dominant hand over the cup. It's symbolic of putting, like, giving the medicine, or excuse me, the sacraments, those instructions. And I was so in such a place of desperation that my intention was basically like, dear God, don't let me go back to jail. Like, help me with my rage, help me with my anger. um and that's really not an ideal intention, but in any case, that's where I was coming from, and that's why I went. um I had nothing, there was literally nothing else on my mind other than like optimistically believing that if I drink this tea, that I was going to somehow cure my rage. But what happened instead, in addition to, I should say, because it really did, like I wouldn't say that it like completely dissolved my anger and rage, but I will say that it greatly diminished it. And then on top of that, I also like walked out of that ceremony never wanting to drink again. And the third thing that I would say, that, and this is the one I just call the plot twist because there was no other word for it. And essentially, what happened was, within about an hour into that ceremony, the the shaman, which by the way, I didn't even know what a shaman was at the time. I mean, this woman, she went by the title, like she signed her emails that and things like that, and so I knew how to address her, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't really have a context for it, right? And so she comes up to me an hour into ceremony and she talks to me about a few of the things that I'd seen and experienced and was witnessing. And then she just says, I need to go talk to my other guests. So I'm gonna leave you now. But before I go, I just want you to know it's my privilege to inform you that you're a shaman. You just haven't remembered yet. And I literally, like, the very first thought that went through my head, Nick, was like, I don't even remember there being a shaman package when I signed up. Like, who knew? Who knew you could sign up to be a shaman? Like,
But wait, there's more.
yeah, exactly. And so I was so confused. It like went right over my head. I like, what are you talking about, lady? And then like it was a real long process of me really coming to grips with the idea that like from like, I don't know what you're talking about, to I don't want that, to it might be real, to wait a minute, like I think it is real, to like it is real. And that took a long time. Like I was consulting with, other shamans and doing my best to talk to people who knew about shamanism. I was like completely on my own trying to figure it out, because that woman that led my first ceremony, she sort of like disappeared, right? Like that was kind of her, like there's people in that sort of that space that are nomadic, right? And they'll go to different towns. And so I didn't really have a way to really sit with her and speak to her about it. But anyway, after that real long process of finally coming to a place of like, oh, wait a minute, like this is real, and I'm going to accept it and embrace it. That's when I started like really like again trying to dive into the landscape, so to speak, and learn everything I could about it, and saw those three avenues of either being, a tight word of mouth group, or being a religious group, to ultimately getting the DA exemption. And we kind of started at the first spot, and then we went through, like I said, those different iterations. So it was a years long process, really, to get to the place where I am now.
Humor me.
Yeah.
What the fuck is a shaman?
That's a great question, man. That's a great question, and and I don't even consider myself a shaman, which is funny. Like she was the first one to ever use that title with me, and if somebody says, "Oh, let me introduce you to my friend Matt, he's a shaman," like I don't take the time to correct it. Like if people want to throw that out, but yeah, let me kind of give you my understanding of it. So first of all, the word shaman is Siberian, and it means like the one that sees. And in my in my pure belief, I believe that the only people who are really truly shamans are Siberian shamans. However, and that's because that word comes from that language, and so I feel like it's wrong for anybody that's not Siberian to use that word.
Yeah, we
However,
can't culturally appropriate.
right, right, and so in the '60s, but in the '60s, um, you know, the anthropologists came up with the extension of that word shamanism. So I kind of see like there's this big circle of the what I call the shamanic family, right? And within that, you would have the Siberian shamans. Down in South America, you have what they call taitas, ayahuasqueros, curanderos, things like that. More of the Celtic, Northwestern European, that's more druid in nature. Um, then there's the Scandinavian version, which there's a practice called, and it's called Seder or Sederism, which is the practice of that version, like the Nordic version of shamanism. And so, like Seder is a verb, and so it can be one that practices Seder. So that's how I ended up, I guess, landing on what I felt was really where I aligned, what resonated the most with me. And so I ended up doing 4 apprenticeships. One was with a woman here locally who was Native American and Norse, and she took me through a 2-year apprenticeship. And then I met a man that taught me how to serve the the sacraments, because my first mentor, she never she never dabbled in the sacraments, in psychedelics. So but she taught me sort of like old school shamanism. And then my second mentor, he taught me the plant ceremonies. Then I ended up meeting a man, a taita, which is the title, in Colombia. And so I will go to South America a couple times a year generally, to take people down to Colombia to see that version of an ayahuasca ceremony. Which, by the way, I don't serve ayahuasca. I serve the second man that I studied with. He taught me a plant called acacia, and that's where I
The
spend my time.
tree?
Yeah, exactly. The acacia tree, ACACIA. And then the fourth mentor, I ended up going on a pilgrimage to Scandinavia, specifically Sweden, because my family tree is sort of like half southern Sweden, Denmark, and half German. And so I ended up going there and studying with somebody, a shaman there. But like, to me, there are hallmarks. To be more specifically, to answer your question, there are hallmarks within, and because I've done a lot of reading and studying on this topic, and so some of the sort of like what I would call like classic hallmarks, sort of like check the box, and if they don't have this, they technically don't fit into that family of shamanism. Like number one is what's really fascinating is that these are found throughout all these traditions, whether it's North America, South America, Europe, you know, the Far East, whatever. But like one of them is that universally is found the principle that shamans work in 3 worlds: the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. And so that's found and seen in higher, like all these different like cave drawings and Neolithic sites and things like that, where they're drawing that out, the 3 different worlds. Number 2 is the ability to work with spirits, different entities on the other side of the veil, for example. Um, those are a couple of the big hallmarks, if you will.
Okay.
Altered states of consciousness with or without plant medicine or plants is a big one.
Shaman, the one who sees, like a ferryman, huh? To guide you.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
So there's different ceremonies. You said acacia, which I think this table is made of acacia, um, but that's also a hallucinogenic as well.
So kinda, there's roughly 150 species of acacia tree, and roughly 75% of them are psychoactive, yes. Um, I actually, same as you, I have a bench on my front porch, that's acacia wood. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So okay.
a friend of mine gifted me some honey that was harvested from hives that were built near an acacia tree. So there's acacia honey. Like, it's not psychedelic or anything, but just, yeah, the acacia tree is kind of in our, collective social experiment here. But yeah, so like ayahuasca works on the active ingredient dimethyltryptamine, or DMT. And that's what I was telling you, like the chacruna network, they named it after the chacruna leaf, which contains the DMT. Well, the acacia tree, the bark from the acacia tree contains DMT as well. And so it's actually more like it was used more commonly in Australia, where there's more of the acacia tree. Some people used to call it, or maybe they still do, but they used to call it Oziwaska instead of ayahuasca. It's Oziwaska, but it was made with acacia. But yeah, acacia is what I serve because, again, I didn't feel right. Like there really is like a lot of like real deep resistance and sort of gatekeeping in this space about like white men or white women going down to the jungles for 6 months and then coming back feeling like they, suddenly have 7 generations and 50 years worth of experience and get into the ayahuasca space. And, like, and just capitalizing from it. And so I I didn't really want any of that sort of resistance to what I did. And while I was trying to figure it out, I got connected with this man who taught me acacia. But at the time, I was just searching for any sort of mentorship to help me like learn how to navigate this. And I guess it was just another one of those happy miracles where the one person who I found who was willing to take on another mentor was this guy who serves acacia, has probably been serving acacia for close to 20 years as well. Um,
In the United States.
in the United States. But before that, he was down in the jungles in Peru. He went down there for his own healing. He was going down there for a week in the 90s and ended up staying for 7 years. And he didn't have any aspirations of becoming a shaman. He was going down there for a week long retreat ceremony, ended up staying 7 years. And while he was there, was given this recipe for acacia. And so I've been working with him for the past 5 years, studying under him, still do. In fact, I think he's kind of nomadic as well. He's in Colorado right now, and hopefully I'm going to meet up with him soon uh, to talk over some more things. But yeah,
You mentioned much earlier bad actors. So
yeah,
you must see, because you described a lot of different ways to skin a cat there. Um, so that leaves it open to people capitalizing for their own personal gain. They don't really actually care. They're just in it for the money or for the notoriety or what have you. Are you able to recognize those people that are going to be on the Netflix documentaries that I'm going to
yeah.
watch later on down the road?
Yeah, let me give you and your audience a list of red flags when considering sitting in these ceremonies, okay? First of all, any sort of like, oh, this is my ancient shamanic secret recipe. I'm not going to tell you what you're putting in your body. Like that to me is a giant red flag. If anybody who comes to my ceremony wants, I will sit down and I'll explain exactly how I cooked and prepared this sacrament for you, for them. Number two, um, good old like, references. Like, if anybody ever wants to sit with us again, if they say, well, do you have any references? Absolutely, here you go, here's a list. And on top of that, I'll also, provide you, with their permission, a list of guys in the regiment that have sat with me, right? again, like I think I've had somebody from every group come through, at least. So again, references are really big and important. Number three, I think, is you should at least be able to ask them about the legalities. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody who's in the sort of the tight-lipped space is a red flag, but at least like ask them and make sure that they have an awareness. Like, you're able to say like, well, which one are you? Do you have a DEA exemption? Are you a religion? Or are you just kind of like, you know, like keeping it out of the public eye? And hopefully they're able to articulate that. Another red flag is anybody who has not been through some sort of like really lengthy, intense apprenticeship. Like this is not an easy skill set to gain. It's not there's a lot more to it than, half a dozen YouTube videos or whatever. Or even sitting through your own ceremonies. I don't think will adequately prepare you. I like I said, and I also believe that like really truly mentorship, the mentor apprentice relationship never ends. I'm in pretty frequent conversations and communication with all four of my mentors. It's never ended. Like even though I may have like finished all the training requirements, I'm still in touch with them quite frequently, especially if anything new that we didn't encounter comes up. So I think that's another one. Another red flag for me is like some of these places, um, they don't have any medical support whatsoever. Now, all the psychedelics are safe. The way I say that is like, you know, on their own, like psilocybin, ayahuasca, acacia, LSD, peyote, and the list goes on. None of them, in and of themselves, are fatal on any level, right? But it's when you do things in an unsafe manner where they will become unsafe. So, like one of them, iboga, um, iboga to me is the most dangerous. Like a good facility that serves iboga will have a cardiac surgeon in the room. Like that one is that serious that if you don't have a cardiac surgeon in the room, I would not approach it. Um, the other ones, I've always said we want a medic and we would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So we keep the gentleman that we use most often. Well, the last ceremony was an 18 Delta. He lives on the East Coast, and my last ceremony was on the East Coast. So I have an 18 Delta there that I'm working with that we can pull in. But most of my ceremonies are here in Utah. And the gentleman that we use, great man. He a veteran. He was aspiring to become an 18 Delta, but then he got blown up and was medically retired. He got a roadside bomb in Iraq. But great dude, great medic, and so we keep a medic in the room. The only time we ever needed the medic was I had one gentleman who was diabetic, and he started feeling he was really dehydrated was the point. We tested his blood sugar and everything, and he was just adamant that he needed to go to the ER. So we took him, and I walked straight into that ER room, and I told the doctor, this gentleman is diabetic. His numbers are this, but we think he's pretty dehydrated, and he has to be brought here. And oh, by the way, I told him I used the word or ayahuasca because he wouldn't have known what acacia was. But I said, and he's on ayahuasca. And the doctor was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, let me.
Yeah, the doctors, emergency room doctors, like you can't tell them anything. They would be surprised, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then what was the other? There was one other red flag that I was thinking of that I forgot that too. So,
That's all
but
right. Oh, you said the word preparing, you know, you're going through your training and you're preparing. Preparing for what?
well, and see that like we could really deep dive into like some of the more mystical things, but and I used this analogy a lot, and I think you can appreciate it now. When you went through the Grand Canyon, was that the first time you ever saw it up like in person?
No, that was the first time seeing that sunset like that.
Okay.
Um, but every time you see it, you're like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
that's a big hole, you know. I just
Yeah.
walked up to it with 100 kilos on my back, like
I
an
saw
idiot,
that.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So
I was worried that the dog was going to get, froggy and pull the leash and you were going to go over the edge.
I saw the video. He looked right over the edge, went meh, and he turned right around and started scratching. He don't care. And then my one friend, he said, "Well, what if the dog had fallen?" I said, "There was nothing like that little stumble I did in the video. I did that on purpose to like throw people off, like to mess with people because I can, but there's no. I was solid as a rock. There's that dog could have jumped off at 15 miles an hour and it would have just bounced right back. Like,
Yeah.
no, no, no shaking me.
Well, the reason I bring up the Grand Canyon is because I use it as a metaphor to just explain that, like, for people who've never been to the Grand Canyon, there's a word in psychedelic space called ineffable. Ineffable just means there's no words to describe what I'm experiencing. And so to me, the Grand Canyon is kind of one of those things like until you've been there and you've seen just how massive that hole is, right? I like I even if I look at it a picture or a video, it's still not the same thing. And that's kind of how I relate to like psychedelic spaces. There's so much that I can't even begin to put into words. It's completely ineffable that it's hard to convey. But like for example, some of the things like you say, like how to prepare, like everything from the prayer and the sequence that we go through that to prepare the space, or how to clean the space, how to protect the space from dark entities and things like that, how to call in my guides for assistance, how to call in the guides of the people who are going for their healing, things like that. How to even, like, it took me years to just learn how to basically prepare the medicine. Like, that was a really long process. I can generally tell people, like I said, I'm happy to share the recipe so that there's no red flags, so that you have the full knowledge of what's going into your body. But like cooking it and preparing it was a really it was a process that took years to get to the place where I'm at now, where I can like comfortably prepare that and be confident with the medicine going in. Learning how to dose people, like what's the proper dose, which my belief is that the dose should be tailored per person. Like a lot of these places have like a single dose. And so that's a little bit tricky when you're working with a 105-pound woman, which by the way, we don't do that, but others might be dosing a 105-pound woman versus somebody who might be pushing 250, 300 pounds guy, right? Like it's a different experience.
Hmm. Okay. Got the med support. Good preparing. So, how many of these have you done?
Ooh, that's a good question. I generally prefer to do group ceremonies because a lot of the work that goes into a ceremony is the same whether there's one person or 10, really. You know what I mean? I always have a staff. Our staff is by, with, and through, meaning it's, veterans, by veterans, for veterans. Um, and so there's not a lot of change between one person and 10 people. So I kind of tend to focus on the groups, but there are circumstances where somebody really does want or needs to be in a private ceremony, just one-on-one. And even then it's not really one-on-one. I always have, like I said, I always have medical in the background, but they want to go through on their own. So I the and I guess technically I could go back and add it up, because the other thing that we require is everybody to fill out an intake form, which we keep, like HIPAA. We try to look at it as like HIPAA as well. So we don't talk about what happened in ceremony. That's that's sensitive in nature, right? And then secondly, those intake forms get stored in a HIPAA approved system, so that we're not, like putting people's that's the other thing too, is like, is there an intake process? Do they have an intake form? Are they screening you for medical and psychological problems? That's another big red flag when these don't, they don't. But in any case, So it's if I so the only way I could really do it, I guess I could go back and add it up, but I kind of just average and I look at it as okay, probably averaging about 2 ceremonies a month, and the average number of participants is probably about 6 ish. If you factor in there might be ceremonies with 1 or 2 and some as high as 10 to 12. So let's say 6. So, 2.5 times 6 is 15 times by roughly 4 plus years. So, yeah, fair bit.
Yeah. You feel you're getting better and better, or is that does it always continue, or is it always something new as well?
There's times like I always go into a ceremony, like I'll spend a lot of time before a ceremony really meditating on everybody who's coming. Same with our staff. Like, we all prepare very seriously for this mission. We look at it like a mission. We look at it like it's a patrol because essentially we're kind of leaving this realm and going into another realm. So we look at it like, okay, we're going to count these men out the wire, we're going to count them back in the wire. And so we put a lot of time and effort into meditation in preparing for that, and then that will help me really like and our team go into it confidently because we want you to feel that confidence, right? Like you don't want to be going on a patrol with somebody who's like completely anxious and panicking and like like oh my god, like the whole way out, right? You want to be with that old salty guy who's been to Afghanistan a number of times and has done a number of patrols. So yeah, I do work a lot on my confidence and in preparation so that we bring that sort of that confidence and sense of that security and professionalism to it. But no, like yeah, like a lot of my like more than one of my mentors. In fact, I would say it was probably 3 out of 4. Maybe the only one that didn't is my mentor in South America, and that might be more language barrier. But 3 out of my 4 mentors have always said, the moment you think you know it all, you're a danger to anybody in this
I
space.
was just going to say that. That's exactly the thing I was going to say, because I said when I've got to 100 episodes, I was like, I know enough now to fuck up my whole show. And it's a pilot. I heard a pilot tell that story. He said at 30 takeoffs, I was a danger to everybody, my crew, the
Yeah,
civilians, casualties, or the enemy and the friendlies. And I was just going to say that. Yeah. Do you feel like you got to a point where you're at least aware that now you're dangerous to people?
yeah. No, I would say so. I think that there's like, and one of the things that I love about our team is that our team is like I will tell I've told them like when we gather for because we'll gather for meetings, we'll gather for training, things like that. We'll even do like rehearse CPR. Again, not because there's a real great danger of it, but you just never know. And we'll train. And when we train, I tell them, I'm like, men, like one of the hardest parts about being in this room with you is knowing that if I don't like really work my ass off at this, I will quickly become the weak link. And I do not want to be the weak link. And so, no, I feel like, you know, it's going to take me my whole entire life to really, truly, master this. I feel it's a real juxtaposition because part of me feels like, yeah, I'm very confident enough that like when people come to me that I can safely lead them through a ceremony, but there's another part of me too that realizes that I need to stay humble and learning and in mentorship, apprenticeship roles with as many mentors as I can to continue to really perfect this craft of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. I with the show, right? Not the same thing, but professionalism, right?
Sure.
I try and interview everybody that comes on here as well as I can, or have at least a good conversation as well as I can, if my abilities allow me to, because that's all I can do. I can only do as good as and I'm going to get better and better. So this interview with you should be much better than my first interview, right? But that's how time and experience works. And as long as you're aware that God, this is you're doing serious thing, and you can seriously fuck up somebody's mental health. You got to be aware of that every time. As long as you take that seriously, then you'll be fine, right? Of this person has put a lot of faith in me, and I need to do the best I can. Otherwise, I shouldn't be doing this.
Well, yeah, in fact, when this happened, when I like started to come to grips with like, again, I was just like you, like what I went from what is a shaman to finally accepting and believing that that was a real thing that I was supposed to do with my life, being called to do. Um, I kind of told myself, not kind of, I told myself, I said, look, Matt, like if you're going to do this, like you spent 20 years in elite space with elite men doing elite things. Like that was the height of professionalism. Like I want to bring that same attitude and that same degree of professionalism to this. It may be completely out of like the ordinary for most of the operators, most of the people that listen to this, or men that we know, like the whole like shamanism, plant medicine, psychedelics, like that might be weird. Sure, I get it. Again, until you go and stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon and look over the edge, you don't always understand it. But what I can say though, even if you don't understand it, is that like my internal process and my internal monologue was no, I'm gonna address this the same way I addressed being a Green Beret in the regiment.
Yeah. And that's another thing of doing and seeing. I think more people than we, maybe I even think, are very accepting of all of these because whatever the fuck we've been doing ain't fucking working
Yeah,
at all. Right. And everybody's pretty fed up with, their buddies offing themselves and drinking themselves to death and alcohol related incidents and things like that. So I think we're the most open to all of these things that we've ever been because the past, if the past is any indicator of how things are going to go in the future, we need to do something else.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that acceptance is growing for sure. I agree with that. Um, there's a few. I think there's just like a few like sort of prevailing um, dissenting opinions out there, and you know I try really hard to just kind of sit in neutral imitation space, meaning like I'll put my information out there, like, hey, this is the next ceremony, or if you follow me on social media, I'll put it on my social media so that again, I'm in that, I'm not in that tight lip space, so I'll put it out there. I'll tell people when I'm doing ceremonies, um, in public social media, and that's about it. I don't hound people. I mean, a few people have been on my list and I might text them a little more frequently because they've said like, hey, like I really want to come, this next date's not going to work, but keep me informed. And so some of those I'll send out a few more invitations to, but ultimately I'm not trying to sell anybody or convince anybody whatsoever uh, to come to ceremony. I have a belief that ceremony, it aligns when it's supposed to. You'll know when it's your time to be in ceremony. And so to me, it's kind of a very hands off, not emotionally attached to the outcome type of thing. And again, we're not really trying to monetize it. Like essentially what we do is we take, we have a basic set of standard operating costs. Like our facility, the staff. Then we have to pay the doctor that looks over your intake form. We have to pay the psych that looks over your intake form, the cost of the medicine and the food, and then divide it by the number of people in ceremony. Like there was no profit margin. There, Matt's not taking home a paycheck. Like I'm living off of my retirement and my disability check, and that's it.
It's all right. All
Yeah, it
right.
is. I'm
Yeah. Okay. This question been trying to get the correct wording in my head for quite a few minutes now. All right, because people throw out the word ibogaine, ayahuasca. Now you've got acacia, and you've got that other word that I didn't write down.
psilocybin,
No, I know that one. You said the name of the plant that it's named
peyote.
after.
Oh,
Okay,
Shakruna.
peyote as well. Chacruna, that one. So, uh, what's the hierarchy of potent versus mild? I don't know. You know the Scoville scale of for
Yeah,
hot peppers. Do
yeah,
these all things rate on their own type of scale for potency? Is that a thing?
yeah.
Am I saying the right words? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I understand your question. Maybe I'll just change it a little bit though. Like instead of potency, how about like levels of intensity?
Okay, yeah.
And so I'll work up bottom to top. Um, I would say San Pedro, which is a cactus. Its native name is Wachuma, and it is like peyote. And the active ingredient in both is called mescaline. And that one's really gentle, really nice. It's a long journey, lasts about 10 to 12 hours. It's very connecting to nature. You feel like you're one with nature. Then up from that, I would say is psilocybin or magic mushrooms. Um, Depending on how many you take, and that's the one that I recommend everybody should be microdosing psilocybin. Between psilocybin, magnesium, niacin, and lion's mane mushrooms, you can reverse TBIs. Like that's called the Stamets stack. You can Google Stamets stack,
I was
and
just trying to think. I was just trying to think that guy's name.
yeah, yeah, Paul Stamets. So that will reverse the TBIs for the guys in in our predicament. And that one, like, that one can be pretty gentle. Even at the higher doses, it can be pretty gentle. Um, the Spanish name for them is El Niños, meaning the children, because they can be very playful. Up from there, I think you would have to say um, acacia. Acacia and ayahuasca are very, very similar. But most people who've done both tell me that acacia is softer and gentler than ayahuasca. And then you have ayahuasca, and there's a variety really of ayahuasca. Like the Colombian version of ayahuasca is called yahe, and every shaman, every tradition sort of has, there's the base recipe, but there's their recipe where they might add a little bit extra or do it slightly different. So it varies from tribe to tribe, tradition to tradition, and taita ayahuasquero to taita, depending on how they serve it. But yeah, I would say like acacia is right above psilocybin, and then you get into the ayahuasca / space, and that can be very brutal too, or intense. Because also depending on their tradition, like so, for example, when I take people to Colombia to sit with that shaman, he'll he'll start his ceremonies at sundown, and they go a full 12 hours to sunrise, and he'll offer a cup of ayahuasca about every 2 hours. So some people get like 4 and 5 cups deep into ayahuasca, and that's really intense. And then you get to the last one, which is iboga, the active ingredient being ibogaine, and that's an 18 that can be an 18, like for some people, an 18-hour journey. And it can also be very disassociative, meaning like if you're in any of those others, you're very aware that you're still in your body, you're still in this space in this room. Like in fact, we will encourage people to journal throughout the experience. So they might pop up their eye mask, write down something meaningful, close their book 30 seconds later, put the eye mask, go back into into the journey. That's not always possible in an iboga ceremony where you completely disassociate. So to me, iboga is the most intense, and again, like I said, also the most risky as well. Now, again, I want to be very clear because I'm not trying to disparage anything here. But there's two nonprofits out there, Heroic Hearts, which up until recently I was an ambassador for. I kind of left that just because I'm getting too busy. And then there's another one called Vets. And they, speaking of documentaries, they just released a documentary called Waves and War. It's about vets. It's something like veterans seeking something solutions. I can't remember exactly what their acronym is, but they raise money to send veterans down to these ceremonies, and they are primarily focused on iboga. And so, again, great work, great medicine, doing a lot for our veteran community, but it is, and they go to I know the clinic that they send them to, and I know the man that runs it. He's a friend of mine, and I text him occasionally. Um, and he does it right. Okay. He does it right. Like, iboga is so dangerous that if you have any SSRIs or benzos or painkillers or alcohol in your system, you're gonna risk your life. And so when you show up at their clinic, they will take your blood and have you piss in a cup. So they're doing it right. But I also believe that we can also get, much further, in terms of reaching the scale of this problem, uh, by incorporating more than one type of sacrament, more than one type of psychedelic, and not having it be quite so expensive, because that's a $4,000 price tag. And so, yeah, it's a great work. Love what they're doing, but also I feel like we can scale it by using something other than iboga.
So just to clear up for semantics, it's iboga, and then ibogaine is which one's? Okay,
Iboga
is
is the
that south?
plant. Yeah, iboga is the plant, and ibogaine's the molecule.
Okay, what's the origin of that word? What country or plant?
Gabon. Yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah, Gabon, West Africa. So ayahuasca, South America. Iboga or ibogaine is African. Psilocybin is worldwide. Um, Peyote, Wachuma are central, like North America, really. Central America, South America. Uh, I don't know if they grow peyote in South America, but they definitely grow San Pedro, Wachuma in South America. And so, yeah, and then acacia is global too. Acacia grows on 6 of the 7 continents.
What's This is just what's cut? Is it cut or cut?
Cot,
What is that? Cot. What
cot
is that?
is yeah, cot's a stimulant, really. It doesn't have any psychoactive properties, but it's a stimulant, and that's another African plant. And
Yeah,
I think it's getting a lot of widespread use actually across, you know, from Africa to Asia, if I understand correctly. Yeah.
just popped in my head. All right, fuck, so much information. So, how did you? When? So, how long did it take you to write this book?
From the beginning, like and here's the again, I know that some of this stuff is, far out there for some, but right when I was in the middle of my wrestle with this whole, am I, is this real type of thing, I decided to go to a friend's house to do a psilocybin ceremony with them, because I didn't want to do it by myself. I wanted to practice safe practices and or best practices. I wanted a trip sitter. So this friend, she happened to be the same one that was kind of instrumental in helping me find my mentor and helping me find ceremony. She offered to do a ceremony, to trip sit for me. She's not shamanic. She was going to trip sit and do a psilocybin ceremony. And I decided to take 7 grams, which that's a lot. Like 5 is a hero's dose. I had done about 1.5 grams before that. Is all. That was my only experience, and I settled on 7 grams that night. So I go down there, and this to me, this is an important part, because it kind of helps me to understand that or convey the idea that I really believe that God was behind all of this in the most sincere way. I believe that this is all, like, for me, this is all about the sacred, all about the divine. And my wife, who's not in this space at all, like she's never done plant medicine, has no desire to do it, but she wait, and she's not like, she doesn't really do these types of things. But the night before that ceremony, I was asleep, and she woke me up and she says, "I don't know why I'm telling you this, but peacock." She's like, I don't know where it's coming from. I just know I'm supposed to say peacock." I'm like, okay, like at this point, we haven't had a lot of these really, you know, bizarre experiences. Now they're like all the time, kind of in this world for me. But that was kind of really new. And I was like, okay, I'll tuck that away. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it. And I'm driving to southern Utah actually to do this ceremony. And I'm talking myself out of it the whole way. I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm wasting my whole day driving down there doing a ceremony. I'd rather be home. And I got to the point where I talked myself out of it. I said, I'm gonna pull over, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee, fill up with gas, and I'm turning around and I'm headed home. I'll text my friend from the gas station, let him know I'm not coming. And I pull into that damn gas station, and there was a big chain link pen full of peacocks. I was just like, all right, universe, man, I get it. You want me to go through with this, I'm going to do it. So instead of turning around, I filled up with gas and kept going. And I go down here and I go to this woman's house, her and her husband, and they're trip sitting for us. I take the 7 grams. And in one of my earlier ceremonies on ayahuasca, I had an ancestor come through. His name was J-E, with an apostrophe over it. And he talked to me a lot during that second ayahuasca ceremony. And when I took the psilocybin, he came back and he was sitting like literally, I was cross-legged sitting on the grass, and he was sitting cross-legged across from me. So like not even arm's length away, right? And he starts talking to me and talking to me. Like, in fact, I keep journals of all of my ceremonies that I've been through. Like, this is it. This is that journal and that ceremony. But he started talking so much that eventually I had to tell my friend, I'm like, listen, like, this is important stuff, and I can't write it down. I'm not in the right frame of mind, but I'll repeat what I'm being told to you if you'll just capture it. And so I transcribed her notes into my journal eventually, is what I did. But one of the events in that experience was he handed me a book. Like literally he like went like this. He says, "Here." And I take it from him, and I read the title. It said "From Green Beret to Shamanism: One Man's Journey to Heal." I think, oh, cool. This is gonna be a great book. I'll look it up after this wears off. And he's like, "Yo, dummy, like you're gonna write that." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not an author. I'm not a writer." He's like, "Yeah, it's not really the point." And so I started working on it back then, and that would have been like late 2021. And then, like I started practicing and apprenticing and holding ceremonies. Eventually, it went on the shelf. It went on the shelf for probably about 3 years. And then when I went on my pilgrimage to Sweden to study with my mentor over there, I actually went over there to find a mentor. I didn't even have this man in mind, but I was like, I'm going to go to Sweden. I'm going to find me a shaman over there, and I'm going to study with him. And I flew to Sweden without a plan, without hotel reservations, just with this mission of finding this somebody. I don't know who. But while I was there for 8 weeks, like literally, carrying a backpack, a rucksack, and walking around Sweden looking for a shaman. But while I was there, I got really, the message came through that I really needed to finish the book. And so when I got home, it was August. Yeah, it was August when I got home. I was done with the rest of the book, about probably more than 2/3 of it. So it's 360 pages. So I probably wrote the last 200 pages in that last 6 weeks of 2024. And then 2025 was me working with a professional editor and graphic artist and all the things to get it to the place that it is now.
You had to have some idea in Sweden. You weren't just wandering around going door to door, were you? Or did you have
No, I wasn't going door to door, but I had no plan. It was because there was another part of it too where I had done a DMT ceremony, which is when you smoke the DMT versus drink it. And in that DMT ceremony, it was basically God chastising me for not trusting in God. And so I thought, okay, fine. You want me to trust you? Let's do a trust fall. I'm going to go to Sweden without any support, with any plans to find a mentor. And so, you know what busking is? You know, like when you're on the street corner playing music? I took these, which are my runes, which runes are a form of divination. So I took my runes with me and I would sit on the corners and do runes castings to earn, my money for a place to stay or a place to eat. And I hitchhiked and I made the promise that no matter what, like whoever asked me what I was doing, I would tell them, I'm like, well, I'm on a shamanic pilgrimage. And that either like ended the conversation right there, like, okay, Nutter, bye. Or it led to like, really, tell me more. And then really it was a chain of events from I met a woman and her husband who they introduced me to a gentleman that was from Estonia, and then he introduced me to a woman, gave me the contact information of a woman in Denmark, and then she put me in touch with this man in Sweden. And now here's the real kicker, Nick. This is why it's this is how the universe like answered those prayers for me, or answered that RFS, if you will. And I met this gentleman. He had been practicing shamanism for 45 years. He'd been teaching it for 40 years. And, he had been a student of Thich Nhat Hanh, which was a pretty famous Vietnamese monk in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. He was also personal friends with two other shamans who are pretty famous in this space, one by the name of Michael Harner and another one by the name of Sandra Ingerman. And so, in terms of mentorship, like I couldn't have asked for a better mentor. But here's the kicker: he was an expat and he had moved to Denmark like in the 70s to get his PhD in anthropology when he found his shamanic calling, and then just stayed with shamanism for the rest of his career. But the reason he was an expat was because he was a Vietnam veteran and a combat veteran. So when I met him, like, first there was the shamanic resume, so to speak, which was out of this world. And then there's, his combat and war, his military and combat experience. Like, I don't think I could have designed that if I'd sat down and tried to find the ideal mentor. But by just wandering and telling people what I was doing, yeah, like the series of events unfolded where like I was in his class like by the 1st of July.
crazy? Absolutely crazy.
It was mind blowing crazy, actually. He's just
And
one of my very best friends. I consider him almost like a father figure. I think he's 83 now, and he and we had some really really good talks together about war, about combat, about loss and suicide and shamanism. And like I literally had no other plan other than to just let source guide me that whole time. Like I said, I went there to prove like whether or not I could trust in God. And I felt like I got that answer for sure.
good, good. And then we wrap up. So we get done with that. We come back. You get more on your way. You finish writing the book, and then obviously you reach out to lesser known operators. Hey, can I come on
Obviously.
your unheard of podcast at the time to come record an episode? I mean, that's a cool fucking journey, man.
It's been amazing. Like I have it in me to write a couple books. I feel like there's a couple of other books I want to write too, but one of the ones I write is I have the title of is called Shamanism: My Descent into Madness, because I mean it's such an interesting space for me. I do feel like there's a lot of things that we as human beings get like sort of conditioned to not believe in, to not, not to accept, because we're so hardwired as human beings here having this earthly experience that if we can't, see it, smell it, taste it, hear it, touch it, like it's not in our reality anymore. And that's just not the case. There are so many things going on around us. Again, I touched on it briefly in the beginning that, my wife lost a son. And, I think there's probably some people out there who think that like mediums are charlatans. And, there's definitely charlatans in that space, just like there's bad actors in the psychedelic space. But there's also an organization out there called the International Study for Near Death Experiences, and IANS, and they double blind test mediums. So there's no way that they can fake it. It gets, the subject and the person reading are both randomized, and then they have to do a reading on this person. And so mediums, the right mediums, qualified mediums, have brought us a great deal of comfort in, and especially my wife, more so than me, obviously, in being able to connect with her son. And and so it has opened me up to a whole new world of, what we would call the metaphysical, in terms of things that are going on around us all the time, but somehow we've lost touch with. But the truth of the matter is our ancestors were aware of it. Um, like I think another thing that I like to remember to remind, especially guys like us, because again, most of us in the regiment are, you know, kind of like identify with the Till Valhalla sentiments and the Till Valhalla mindset, right? And it's like, yeah, a wonderful, perfect example, because again, our ancestors, we had like one of my favorite movies about that is the Norseman. I think it came out about 2 years ago.
Okay.
um yeah, great movie, and there were three shamans in there. So in our Scandinavian sort of Viking mentality, or the ways that like a lot of guys in this space identify, like it's a big part of your tradition, it's a big part of your lineage. And so those things really aren't that far removed from us if you look at the big picture, if you will.
Yeah, I don't I don't know. What do I tell people? I'm not anti-spirituality, but I am anti-religion. And I think we lack the ability to comprehend our understanding of not only the universe, but anything beyond that. And I don't disbelieve or believe anything, which gives me peace because I just go, yeah, maybe that could be true. I hear some stuff and that's probably that's probably bullshit, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe, um, and if people, it gives them comfort, then that's okay with me. As long as you're not hurting children, animals or the elderly, I'm pretty okay with whatever you got going on.
Yeah.
And as long as those three things, but yeah, I don't, I think whatever we were in tune with, we were closer a long time ago than we are now. Um,
Yeah, in fact, I gave a speech a couple of, well, no, I guess it was about 14 months ago at at a conference around this type of, these topics. And the name of my speech was How Modern Science Validates Ancient Shamanic Wisdom. Because what I'm seeing is that like when scientists like quantum mechanics, quantum physics, string theory, all of that, like they're getting like some really weird stuff's coming out, right? Like when they start talking about quantum entanglement and things like that, or the double slit experiment, where just by observing the particles being shot through the double slit, it completely changes the outcome. And so the more they do that, the more like, again, as I study ancient shamanism, which by the way, like some of the some of the earliest known records of shamanism go back about 50,000 years ago. Some people hypothesize it might go back as far as 100,000 years ago, which, depending on which you know embarkation mark you want to choose, could be almost half of the whole human experience. But in any case, as you study like that, and that 50,000 years worth of history, you begin to see that like they really had a quite an elaborate understanding of the way that the universe is working, and modern science is just barely beginning to catch up to it and validate it.
Yeah. I say all the time, we don't know jack shit about anything. Uh, Medicine, health and fitness, we do our best, but we don't know anything about anything. I'm very resigned to the fact that I'd lack the ability to comprehend almost anything. I do well in what I do, and but I also, for better or for worse, I get very little um, joy out of life. I like others to succeed. I like others to do well, and that's what makes me content and move forward. And I hope that what you're doing can really help the guys, because it's so depressing when the guys they lost their way. I know it was for me. I know what it's like to be really depressed and really sad, and to think that nobody's there for you, when in reality there's so many people there for you.
So
But you're
true.
in your mind, and you think that you're the only one going through these things, and all this shit. I say we don't know anything about medicine. All the medicine, that shit don't work. It's not going to work. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to pull you out. It ain't if you feel better. So I hope that more guys will try something else, something to make them feel better and actually work, actually make a difference. Because, as I said, yeah, whatever we're doing, it ain't fucking working.
Well, and that was I'm so glad you said that, because you know when I got arrested, there were two big like takeaways, right? Like, I'm always AAR, and like I can't shake the habit. So
It's
I'm,
okay.
I'm getting out of jail, and I'm sitting there thinking about like what just happened, and I'm thinking like, okay, what's AAR this? Like, where are you at in life? And the two big realizations that I had was, number one, I'm lying to myself and everybody else in my world too, because I'm not owning my mental illness. And number two, I gotta get out of that rat on a wheel like mentality where I keep doing the same things and expecting a different outcome. And all the things I was doing were all the things that we're told to do, right? I was in therapy, I was in AA, I was taking who knows how many meds. I was doing all the things that the experts said to do, and it still wasn't working. So it was like, at what point do I need to say, okay, it's time to cut sling load from this bullshit. It's time to cut away, because this clearly isn't doing any good. Like, it's, in fact, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. What have I got to do to, you know, to get well? And that's another thing that I want the community to hear too. Like, I remember having this real vivid like thought, and now it's a memory, a real vivid memory. I came out of my therapist's office and got in the elevator, and we made small chat at the beginning, at the end of the session, or whatever. And I know that this is when I lived in North Carolina, and I know that he was going to the Outer Banks that like that weekend with his family. And I thought, I can go home tonight and drink some more, take some sleeping pills, play with that gun in my mouth. And if I die, the only thing that's going to happen to him and his life is he'll get a new patient in my time slot. Now, that's not to criticize mental health providers. They need to be distant from us, right? Or they could never really do their job. And mental health providers provide an essential role. That's great. But my point is that I needed to become my doctor, and I needed to become this doctor's number one patient. And I needed to get smart on all of it. I needed to get smart on my physical health, my mental health, and I needed to tackle that like it was my biggest mission in life. And that's what I guess I advocate for our brothers is like, no, bro, you've got more skin in the game than any doctor you're going to go see. So you should be your own doctor and you should be your own patient and you need to get smart.
Yeah. Uh, those doctors in the hospital, that's a for-profit business.
Yeah.
That's not, you were just a customer. It's terrible as that sounds. Yes, the person might care about you, but the business doesn't. And I say that about the VA as well. The VA does not care about you either. The VA is a for-profit arm of the government. They just recycle the money from one arm of the government back through into the other. So nobody cares about your career but you, and nobody cares about your health but you, really, because everybody's got their own problems. You got to take care of yourself. Yeah, for me, I mean, nothing changed until I stopped drinking. Like that was it. Then everything's on the table again. But if you drink, there's nothing you can do to counteract that. You're just working against the symptoms of alcohol withdrawals or the terrible things that alcohol does to your system. So that's what it was for me. But yeah, I hope that people will take their things more seriously. And again, it's just people don't do anything unless they have to or they want to. So it's better if they do it because they want to, not because they have to. Sometimes it's both. I had to, so then I had to want to as well. Same with you. You got to make that decision. So I want to make a change because we don't want to feel like shit. You don't want to feel like shit. You want to feel better. And so how do we have that positive impact? I go back to what I said. You just have to be open with your story about telling it to people. Got to get people to listen. Only a small percentage of people are going to listen and then they'll take it in. But if more people are honest about what's going on with them, then maybe somebody will be like, I should try that. And maybe they'll want to make a change before they have to make a change. And then it'll actually stick. So
Well, and I think that that's a
hopefully.
really, yeah. And hopefully, and I agree with you. And I actually feel like, that's a really important message or way to say it because, you know, again, going back to the ancient times, we had wisdom keepers and storytellers that kept that alive, right? And that essentially that's a role that you're fulfilling. And I think it's important work. I think it's important for us to be able to capture um, our experiences because if we don't, like, how do we ever learn? And like, frankly, I hope that one of the lessons learned that comes out of the global war on terror is like what a crock of shit that it was. Like, we like 20 years and 18 of them were a complete waste and just fueling the global military industrial complex. Like, sure, we owed a response to 9/11, of course, but a 20-year response and then to pull out the way we did. So hopefully that there's, um, these stories and these lessons learned are feeding back into the up and coming generations and other, I guess, future leaders.
One thing that I have noticed in myself, right? I have lesser known operators. I made lesser known operators. It's me. I would love for it to do its own thing, but for now, I'm the only person here, right? And I'm the only person that does the interviews, but that's good. I make all the decisions, and for better or for worse, if something is good or bad, I'm the person that you come to see, right? I make all the decisions. But what I've noticed is, and what I said earlier, right? I have a responsibility to, if I'm going to take a step above the crowd and use this and use group and all these connections that I've made, then I better carry myself in a way that's representative of group. When I left Special Forces, I didn't leave it in any better condition than when I got there. I got to group, I got hurt, and then I got medically retired. I did not have a positive or a negative impact on group. I just supported, right? But now I've created this thing where I can, if I want to, have a positive or a negative impact on regiment, and not just our regiment, Rangers, SEALs, everybody that I run into, anybody that enjoys my content or that I speak with. So I have a responsibility to do my best. And the one thing that I take from this is if nobody listens to these shows, if it's just me, I get to take in the best part of somebody's story and I get to learn from their experiences. And what it has done is change the way I speak and the way I think. And it's given me perspective of well over 100 people now. And that hopefully I can make my content and pass that along to other people. So that maybe you're not directly, but through me and through my friends, your story and your connections and the way you've gone about things goes on to help somebody else out. That's the biggest influence that I've seen is I am learning an incredible amount of information that I never thought I'd be able to intake just because I said I wanted to. And that's the best thing. And if I can talk to people that are actually helping people and then hook up other people that need help, well, then it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I had a friend, who was telling me that she was teaching a class. I think it was on story writing. And I guess there was one person who signed up. And she was a little bit, maybe frustrated in the beginning. But at the end of that workshop, the student came up to her and said, like, "Oh my God, you have no idea how much this meant to me and how long I've been looking for this. And, this was exactly what I needed," and all these, things. And her takeaway was like, you just never know what your impact is going to be. Right. And so it's kind of that for me with the book. It's like, you know what? I felt like I felt like God directed me to write it. It's written, it's done. If I sell 4 copies, that's fine. I don't, so hopefully it'll have an impact on at least one person.
You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. I say that a lot. I only say it when I think of it, but I do say it a lot. Only to myself. I've actually never said it out loud to anybody, but you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And, you know, the coolest part about my trip, because you don't know your impact, right? Was I made a post on August. No, I'm sorry, October 18th. I made a post and I put it up on Instagram and I was going to bed. I got my work done. I was going to sleep. And my buddy's widow messaged me and said, Jeremy's buried on the north side of Clarksville there. And I went, well, now I have to go because I hadn't gone to his grave. Right. And, I'm so happy that she messaged me that. Um, and I got to go and I got to take a picture of his gravestone and share that for the other guys to see. Cause first group guys, we don't really make it to Clarksville that often. So, but in going that route, that put me on the north side of base, right in Kentucky. And I was looking at the route and I went, well, if I go like this, I can go to northern Arkansas. And I was planning on going through southern Arkansas from my route. And so I went to Lakeview, Arkansas, through Missouri into Lakeview, Arkansas, which nobody's ever heard of. But my grandfather was mayor of Lakeview, Arkansas for 17 years. And my cousin came out. She lives in Mountain Home. And I filmed my little video and then I sat down on the curb and I just said, how you doing? Because I really cared. And she needed that way more than I did. And just that little thing of all those days and sequences leading up to me just sitting down and listening to her for a while and seeing how she was probably the highlight of the trip. And it only was there beside the dam in Lakeview, Arkansas for 2 people. No content, nothing, just get to help somebody feel better about their day. So you never know the
Beautiful.
impact you'll make on somebody. So, brother, I usually do the 5 questions, but those don't really fit into this episode that we recorded. So I have an alternate set of 1 question
Okay.
that I usually use for return guests, but it does fit here. So this you becoming or working in shamanism. Maybe you're not a shaman, but you are in the practice of shamanism, right?
Fair enough.
This is your pen of light. This is your one thing that you will use to go forward into the world and make it a better place. How do you plan on using that moving forward to do good for the people around you?
Well, I think that yeah, I think that my intention there is to continue to stay in that space of learning and growing um, in a way that I can truly be of service to our community, um, and to those that might need this, and to provide a safe, um, transformative experience to really kind of help alleviate some of the burdens, illnesses, and addictions that our uh, that our community is facing. Um, and again, like it's not from a place of you know judgment or superiority. It's from a place of like having lived that, right? Having been into that abyss, having been on the edge of some really dark shit that I was really fortunate to have crawled my way out. Um, and to just kind of, I guess, more than anything, to just to continue to serve the community and the regiment and men in general. I mean, we were fortunate enough to be part of a really, again, a real select group of men, and something I'm proud of every day of my life. But it's not just it's not just the regiment. There's a lot of men by by whatever reason we've been programmed, like suck it up, um, you know, rub dirt on it, don't cry, don't whatever. And I men are 4 times more likely to end their lives than women. And so we have a lot of work to do with helping men to um, take ownership of their mental and physical wellness. And so to that end too, I just want to, I guess, continue to share what I've learned, what I'm experiencing, and what's worked for me to help men live a more, I guess, a more peaceful life.
One more time, what's the name of the book and how can everybody find you on the socials if they so choose?
So the socials, everything is at Awake Green Beret or just at Awake Green Beret. My website is at awakegreenberet.org, and the book is on Amazon in hardcover, paperback. It's on Kindle, and it's on Audible as well. And it's from Green Beret to Shamanism: One Man's Journey to Heal.
Yeah, man, that was a long time coming to sit down and speak with you. Not my traditional episode, but I really enjoyed speaking with you. Um, it's really an honor. I got a couple thoughts for you after we're done recording here for that, just for you and me. But you got anything for me, brother?
No, I appreciate, I know that this was a little bit outside of your norm. I anticipated that, which was really good for me too, because, most people sort of, like really focus on some of the other aspects. And this really gave me like an opportunity to talk about different things. So I hope that the episode does really well for you because it is different in that light. And I love you have a very casual way, a very humble, sincere way of really wanting to hear the stories. And I seriously, dude, when I told you that, like that phone call we had a couple months ago, like it changed me. So I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in you, and I just want to support you, and I appreciate the work you're doing, man.
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me, and anything I can do to help lesser known operators is for its name, lesser known operators, and everything I can do to help everybody else out is that's what it's all about. So again, it was an honor to have you on. Bye everybody.